We are back from our wonderful trip to Salem, Massachusetts, baby. And now we're going to take you on a trip through Salem through this podcast, okay? Now, we're going to be talking all about what we did, what we bought, what we thought, everything, that the museums, all kind of fun stuff, and even some negatives, because there was some negatives. Now, I've been dying to go to Salem for probably the last maybe 15 years. I haven't been to Salem in 15 years. My dad used to take me when I was a little kid. I went twice. So I was very, very excited to go on this trip. And I will direct you to the screen because usually we're not a very visual show. Usually it's us just talking here, but we will have as many pictures and as many videos as we can from our trip. So keep an eye on the screen when we're talking about things. Richard, this is your first time going to Salem, right?
Yes.
I remembered a lot about it. I remembered a lot of museums. I was the one really orchestrating what we were going to do every day. We stayed there, or we went there because we didn't end up staying in Salem because there was no way we were going to stay there in September. Everything was booked up like a year in advance pretty much. This is right before peak season, but it was still kind of live. It was still kind of live. I can't even imagine what it's like in October. When I used to go as a kid, there wasn't that many people there. But we ended up staying in New Hampshire. And we got in there. We ended up staying about 2.25 days, you would say, right? Yeah. 2.25 days, because day one, we rolled in at about 8 o'clock and we went on a walking ghost tour around the town. I definitely wanted to start with that. As soon as I figured out we were going to get in there like later, I was like, oh, that's the first thing we should do. It's going to be nighttime when we get in there. So let's go on a walking ghost tour. I remember going on one when I was a little kid, and I have an even better memory when I was a kid. The first time I went, maybe when I was 10, my dad's telling me we're gonna go on a ghost tour. I'm like, oh my god, I'm so scared. It's gonna be awesome. And then so we go to the building that has the ghost tour, and we walk in, and they sit us in this conference room, and they have a projector, and they go click click. Okay, here's the witch house, and this is what happened here. Woman died. And we go, okay, and they click click. Okay, so here's where this person died, and if you look up in the window, people say, and then me and my dad look at each other. I'm like 10. I'm like, isn't that place right down the fucking street? Why are we not walking there right now? And I don't even remember. I just remember I just remember this memory of my dad and I laughing about this and simultaneously being pissed about this for at least a year. My dad would like walk in my room and be like, what the fuck? How did we got just like scammed like that? Like, how did we even, what happened? So the next year after I went, maybe when I was like 15, we ended up going on a walking ghost tour, and it was a tremendous experience. And I would say that this experience on this ghost tour was great as well. It was so much fun. You go around Salem at night, and you go to pretty much all the landmarks. They keep you in a certain radius, because Salem is actually not that small, but the part where all the museums and everything is it's all around each other. You're not doing too much walking. You know, everything's kind of in a little square, right? Would you say?
Yes.
You can get to. So the walking ghost tour, you're not doing too much walking.
Well, coming in and doing the ghost tour right away at night.
Yeah.
And walking around, not realizing that we were backtracking at some points of the tour. I thought we walked a lot farther than we did.
Yeah.
But then when we walked around the next 2 days, and I'm like, okay, there's the witch house, and there is that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
you realize it was a lot closer.
This is all right, right around
right on
each
top
other.
of each other. Yeah. You had the mall here, and then that's right next to the witch house and the cemetery, which made it great for us because we didn't have to do. We just walked around, walked in circles pretty much, and saw everything. So I had a great time on the ghost tour. They took you to, first place they take you to is the old witch house, which I'll put a picture up here. And, they say that back in 1692, when the witch trials was happening, there was a maid who was left upstairs because she had some kind of illness. They left her upstairs to basically die. And the family moved out. And ever since then, people heard scratching and tapping, and they heard all kind of weird stuff coming from upstairs. And eventually, and to this day, they say you can see the apparition of the woman, in the window, and they point to the window there. They brought us to Rockefeller's was a good one, where you hear about the lady in blue, and we learned about Bridget Bishop, who was one of the first people that was executed in the witch trials, right?
Yeah, she was the first.
One of the first people. She was like kind of ostracized in the town. She was a rebel in the town, and there was a lot of interesting stories. So you walk around Salem, they tell you history and also ghost stories. So it was a great tour in that regard, that you learn a lot of history. Now, the host of the tour was good. I have nothing bad to say. Okay, we liked her, but there were some definite inconsistencies in this tour. Okay, number one, she was telling us about the big museum. It was called the Essex Museum. The Essex Museum is there, right? It's like the big one in the middle of the town.
The Peabody Essex
Peabody
Museum.
Yeah. So she's telling us, you can go to this museum, that museum, but this museum, the Peabody Museum, it's not really, they don't do a lot of scary stuff. They don't do a lot of, like witch stuff. So we're like, okay. And then I literally look up at the museum, look up at the top, and there is a massive poster that says, Conjuring the Spirit World. And I was like, then what is that? Like literally above our heads?
I was looking at that while she was saying it, and I was just like, I'm kind of confused.
Yeah, I was like, huh? Like, what the hell? So that was number one. Then we finished the tour, and we were the only ones that ended up talking to her at the end. Everybody kind of left because I had stuff that I wanted to ask about other parts of the tour. And my first question was, why didn't we go to the sheriff's house? Why didn't we go to Sheriff George Corwin's house? Because that was my favorite part of the tour when I went as a child. I remember sitting outside that house and just like looking up at it and marveling at it for something. It was my favorite stop, hearing about it. She was like, oh yeah, like you got that mixed up with the witch house. That's the one we went to over there. And I think the one you're thinking of is like it's way down there. It's miles down. It's way out. So I was like, this is incredibly false, because I remember literally talking about this on my show. Like during the 6 Hour Spectacular, we talked about it. Obviously, I didn't say it to her. I was like, whatever. And we Googled it, and it exists, number one. I did not have it confused, and it was a 4-minute walk from where we were. So I was like, okay. I don't know how reliable this host is. Was there any other inconsistencies that you remember?
There was a couple I caught in the information that she gave us, but I can't recall what they were.
Okay.
I mean, she was remembering a lot of information, but I did catch like a couple. Yeah.
I respect the job. You have a lot of dates in your mind. You have a lot of names in your mind. So, it was very funny to witness that, especially looking up at that sign. Just like, they don't do anything scary. There's like a big ghost on the museum. We're like, what the like what? I don't know.
I mean, we've talked about it a couple times about what she said about the witch house.
Oh yeah. Tell me what you say.
She was like, I just sometimes when I'm by this house, it makes me sick to my stomach, and I can't stand next to it. And
while she's standing next to it,
she's standing next to it, and
God.
Then as you told the story about your dad, when they would say like
my dad's the best person to go on a ghost tour with, because he doesn't not believe in ghosts. But every time they tell you a story, so this person got their throat slit in the middle of the cafe, and they say, if you're drinking a coffee at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll see the ghost of Mr. Withers. And my dad would just go, he's looking at me like, like, sure, buddy. Yeah, right.
I was feeling like
that.
You describe your dad.
Yeah, when she was saying, "Oh, I can't sit by the window. I get queasy and nervous." I'm like, all right. Like, listen, there were other parts of our trip where people did say that, and we believe them. That was not one. We were like, all right, okay, you already got our money. You don't need to sell us on this anymore. Like,
right.
All right. And they took us to the graveyard at night, and it was a lot of fun. They took us to one of the Hocus Pocus filming locations where they shot the party scene in Salem, in that big building. And that was the end of day one. Okay, came to a nice conclusion. Day two, it was rainy, it was nasty, but the first thing we did was something I was very much looking forward to, and that was going to the Salem Witchboard Museum, who we have an interview coming up with the creator of the museum. actually, coming up in a couple
You
weeks.
said Witchboard Museum. Is that what you meant
That's
to
what
say?
it's called, yeah. It's called
Oh,
the
okay.
Witchboard
All right.
Museum. Yeah.
All right.
So we got an interview with the creator of the museum, with the owner of the museum coming up soon. So we go in there and you'll see pictures on the screen of how absolutely sick it was. It was awesome. There's Ouija boards from all time periods, Ouija boards you could buy, Ouija boards on the wall, Ouija boards on the ceiling. And what they were I'm not going to really say too much about what they told us in there, because it's you should go and experience it for yourself. The stories they were telling us about the Ouija boards and stuff like that. But one of the things he was saying, and I believe he said this on the show too, was that eventually people start becoming very uncomfortable in the museum as they stand around there. And he was telling a story about a skeptical couple who was like, we don't believe in any of that stuff, and all of a sudden the wife started to get sick. And he was like, yo, you look sick. You got to get out of here before you vomit on my Ouija boards. So she leaves, and the husband comes back the next day, and he's like, yo, I don't believe in any of this stuff, but my wife just blew chunks when we got out of here, and her body was paralyzed on the side of the building for 40 minutes. She couldn't move. He said he got sick. So as soon as I hear that, I'm like, oh boy, we're going to be in for, we started with this? I'm like, oh man, I don't know how we're going to be able to finish the day now. This is going to be sick. So things started to get a little spooky when he started telling us about this Stranger Things Ouija board that's in this cabinet, which I'll put on the screen right now. And he was telling us that he used to have it outside, but people were very drawn to it, and people started feeling very weird around it, he was saying, right? People started having and they had the urge to leave once they saw that board. They said most of the stuff was cool, but he said that was the strongest. They found the strongest activity by that board. And the owner was saying that when people take pictures of it, weird stuff happens in their camera. They have little inconsistencies in the picture or whatever, lights, orbs, blah blah blah. All kind of creepy stuff happens to their camera. So I'm standing around just marveling at all this because I love it. It's not a huge museum, but there's a lot to look at. And what did you tell me after maybe 20 minutes?
I had this urge, I wanted to go.
Right. And you did not walk in there nervous.
No.
You didn't walk in there with any pretenses. You didn't walk in there with any preconceived notions that it was scary and something bad was going to happen to you, right?
No. I used the Ouija board when I was a kid.
Right.
And
nothing bad happened. You said it was fun.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd use one now, but yeah, we enjoyed it.
Right. So you weren't going in there with any spooky thoughts in your mind, and what kind of feeling were you experiencing?
Just like an increasing anxiousness.
Just building.
Right.
Right.
And then it was said maybe this location was maybe more intense than another location, and I didn't really think much of it when I was in one location at one point. Then when I kind of meandered back, I was just like, yeah, I think I want to get the F out of here.
I think it's time to leave right now. You started to feel it, huh?
Yeah.
I didn't know, I wasn't going to give it any thought after I heard that, because I thought to myself, well, if I do start feeling something, then maybe it's in my mind. Maybe it's my mind playing tricks on me. Maybe it's my subconscious. So if I did start feeling anything, I just ignored it because I didn't want to, at that point I feel like it could just be my mind playing tricks on me. But I had a lot of fun in the museum. It's a lot of fun to just see those witch boards, all different kind of Ouija boards, witch boards, because as you'll hear in the interview, a Ouija board is actually just a brand. It's not really the name of that board. They go by all different kind of names. And they had all kind of fascinating facts and news articles in there. So if you ever get a chance, if you're in Salem, you haven't been there yet, go check it out. Shout out to John. He's a great guy, and he's a great host. A lot of energy, a lot of good stories, a lot of knowledge in that brain. Once we walked out of there, on the same block, there was the Halloween Museum, which we got a $5 discount ticket for when we bought tickets to one of the witch museums. It was the Witch Dungeon Museum, I believe, right? Something like that?
Yeah.
So more on that museum in a little bit. But we go in the Halloween Museum, and Pastor ends up pissing off the woman in the that was taking our ticket because he was just not hearing her at all. Like she was telling him it was kind of like the chicken and the chicken and waffle situation with Mo, because she was like, she just said something in passing like really quick, and it turned to this whole thing, because she's like, all right, have fun and make sure you take pictures. And Pastor goes, wait, don't take pictures? She's like, no, take pictures. He's like, don't take pictures. She's like, no, take pictures. He's like, wait, so I can take pictures? She's like, yeah, you could. Wait, so I can. And I'm like, yes, you can take pictures. And she's like, yes, you can take pictures. She was done with you, bro. It was like.
Well, I don't think I said that many times.
I don't remember. It was.
She started getting her nose bent out of shape like after the second time.
I guess she feels like, is this complicated? She probably was like, I say this like 1,000 times. I've never heard anybody even question me on this. You know what I mean? Like, why are you? I thought what I thought was interesting about these museums before we go on was that we went to almost every museum in Salem, okay? And all the other ones are more expensive, higher quality. Everything about them is bigger and better. And for some reason, the Halloween Museum is the only museum with an intimidating bouncer on the outside of the museum. The only one with like a bouncer with his arms crossed, and you have to get ushered in by the bouncer. Like, what is happening in the Halloween Museum that they got the bouncer? The Witch Dungeon Museum don't got none of them. None of the museums with higher quality, more to lose, they don't have a bouncer. It was very perplexing. I don't know. Something must have happened in there. Somebody must have got way too crazy.
I'm wondering. I'm wondering if the Halloween Museum is a front.
That's what I was just thinking too. They're moving weight out of there. They do.
I mean, when you go, it was pretty cool. You know, they had like dummies dressed up as different, Halloween characters, and the everything's painted in neon paint, and they give you 3D glasses, and
it's very immersive.
It definitely was worth $5.
It was definitely immersive. What I pictured was walking in and seeing a bunch of pictures, maybe seeing like, oh, these are old Halloween bags and candy buckets, and this is a turn-up from the 16th century. And I thought it was going to be pretty boring and cut and dry, but it was more like a fun house, it looked like, kind of.
Right, yeah.
It was very immersive.
That's a good way to describe it.
Very colorful, very bright. They had, at one point, you walk into what looks like a neighborhood, kind of. And it's not cheaply done. It's very well done. And they do have little things on the wall. They'll have Halloween buckets, like candy buckets from whatever era. And they'll have things, little displays you could look at. But it was a very visual experience. Everywhere you look, there was something to look at. They had a Mickey Mouse head over one of the doors. And I bet you if Disney ever finds out that museum is getting shut the fuck down, because they don't play at all with that. They don't play. I remember they made that daycare take their stuff off the wall. So if they find out the Halloween Museum got the Mickey head, they are done. That bouncer better not let no Disney executives in there, bro. It's over. Yeah, it was short, but longer than I thought.
Yeah, definitely longer than I thought.
Yeah, when we kept going, when we went to like the third room, I was like, is this still? Because it kind of looks small when you go in. It looks like you just go right around. It looks like it's like a 2-second little rip, but it was actually a lot larger of a museum than I thought. And it was very, very cool. It was worth the $5 and not worth $1 more than that. I'll tell you that right now. So we walked through the rain to a museum that I was very much looking forward to. Probably the one I was looking forward to the most, because this is the one that was really imprinted on my brain when I was a child, okay? This was the Witch Dungeon Museum. Because as I remembered it, you go in, and they do like this little play in front of you where it's like, oh, you're a witch, I'm accused. They're like, I'm not a witch, what are you talking about? They're in a courtroom, and there's 2 actresses on the stage, and they go through this whole, hoopla of accusing each other of being a witch. And then you go downstairs to a mock-up, to like a recreation of what the dungeon looked like, and it was very well done. It's dark, and they have all these cells, more on the cells in a second. So the actresses walk on the stage. The first actress walks on, and she's like, oh, how dare you accuse me of being a witch? And then the other actress walks on the stage, and Pastor and I go, what the fuck? Because she's wearing a big black COVID mask.
Now you know you're retarded.
I was like, huh? I mean, talk about breaking the immersion. Talk about ruining the experience. This is 1692. What were you trying to not get? Smallpox, the Black Plague? I was like, what? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to be rude, so I didn't say anything, but I'm looking at Pastor, and then he shows me his phone. It's like a note, like, what the fuck is this? Like, what the hell is she doing? And I'm like, like, what? I'm looking at everybody else around me like, are you seeing this? He's like, you're a witch. I saw you sign the devil's book. It was like Kenny. It was like Kenny from South Park was on the thing. And then, as you pointed out too, the actress without the mask with more commitment, okay?
Right, definitely.
I mean, she was jumping off the stage. She was falling around. She was twirling around. How dare you look at y'all? There's a bird flying around. She was just flailing her arms everywhere, rolling around, committed. The girl with the mask, how dare you call me a witch? I'm not a witch at all. That's not me. We were like, oh, boo.
It was even more aloof than that. Well, I tell you, I am not a witch.
Yeah, it's like, are you trying to convince us? That's not how you would act back then, because they were going to cut your head off. You were like, no, I'm not. What? She
like,
was
no emotion, no.
She's like,
no body
witch.
language.
I saw you sign the devil's book. Not really. Like, I think you're kind of mixing this thing up. I'm totally not a witch.
It was like,
yeah, she's
no,
like,
I'm not a witch.
She's like, she just rolled out of bed. She's like, I think you got me confused with somebody else. That was not me signing the devil's book. I was signing some other stuff. It's not. I think you're just misconstruing this. And I remember the show being a lot better because we probably had two actresses like the one that was jumping around and flailing around and rolling around the floor. So it was a little underwhelming in that regard, but also a fun experience because that was the last thing I expected to see when that woman walked on the stage was a COVID mask. I was like, what? They were telling you can't take. Well, they didn't say you can't take video, but they said you can't take video, but you could take pictures. So we took pictures.
Take pictures, yeah.
After that debacle, we go down.
What about before though?
What happened before?
Before we even got in, when we were paying, to go in, that you were in need of
desperate
facilities,
desperate need of a bathroom, and the biggest sign on their wall was no bathroom. So you're gonna not make us, but we're paying for this experience that's gonna last about 30 minutes. You don't let anybody take a piss. Like how many of those people probably were like wanting to empty their bladder before they sat down for that show? Probably half of us. Like we're paying you for this experience. Have a bathroom. We'll get to that later.
Okay.
That goes deep. Okay, that's a deep subject. So speaking of deep, we go down to the witch dungeon. What did you think of the actual dungeon part of the museum?
The dungeon was really cool.
Really cool.
I mean, very creepy, and to see. Especially. Well, do you mind if I explain like some of the dungeon?
No, explain the dungeon.
So the first cell that they showed us had a bunk bed, like a little cauldron for heat, and maybe.
No, that was not a cauldron for heat. That was a cauldron to take a shit in.
Oh, okay, that's what it was.
Yeah,
they
didn't get no heat
I
down
thought
there.
there was both, but
Hell
no.
no.
Okay, no. Yeah, like a chamber pot to go to the bathroom in, and then you would get blankets so you could cover yourself and protect yourselves from the rats. And that was for the rich people.
Yeah, because what you don't know is what a lot of you may not know is when you were accused of being a witch and they took you to jail, you had to pay for your stay. So if you didn't have money for the blanket, if you didn't have money for the XXL cell, you were in what they called a coffin cell. If you had no money, you were in a coffin cell, which is basically a cell as big as your body, and they change you to a wall. And the more money you have, the bigger your cell is, and you don't even get food. If you can't pay for food, you don't get food. So they showed us every different kind of cell that they had there with dummies in there to show you the perspective and show you how big it was if you were in there. It was creepy.
It was very creepy. And even like the tour guide called the middle class cell,
right?
Which there was one dummy in there, and you are chained, but you could like turn around a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But then she explained that you would be in there with 3 other people.
Yeah, it's terrible. Terrible. It's hard to really get good pictures down there because it's so dark, but I wouldn't
my
trade that
pictures didn't come out.
mine either. So I think I have a few. I think I got maybe one or two from down there, but it feels like a dungeon. They did a great job, and they actually have a board there, a piece of wood from 1692 that they allow you to touch. They go, yeah, touch it, like feel what that board is like, which is very, very odd that they let you do that. But I remember that board being there when I went 15 years ago. It's not a very long experience in the dungeon. Between the play and the dungeon, 30 minutes probably, right? You're in, you're out.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
But it's very cool, and it's very, very scary because you could imagine yourself being in those cells. Like, you have to go and see what it's like because it's a scary thought that imagine you were in one of those. And you might have been there for months, standing in that cell, because a lot of the cells you couldn't even like lay down in. That's it. You were chained to the wall standing up.
Yeah,
the coffin cell was, anybody's nightmare. If you're claustrophobic, if you got claustrophobic, you're gonna freak out down there. And we went to the mall that day. It was a rainy day. We walked around. The mall's pretty cool. They got a t-shirt shop that I don't remember going to the mall last time I was there. That was my first time going in there. Not very big, but they got a t-shirt shop. They got a comic book shop. And we'll get into that stuff later when we talk about what we bought and stuff like that. Day 3, okay? This was the big day. This was the big day because it was nice and sunny. And it was also the big day because we got tickets to the Witch Museum, okay? This is the biggest museum there. It's the most in demand, the most sought-after museum. There's a lot, when we passed it, there was a big line, and we thought that we could just roll in like every other museum. They're like, nah, it's sold out for the day. You got to get tickets online tonight at midnight, okay? So I had remembered this museum in my mind. I was like, okay, I think I remember what this was, like how this was. We get our tickets online, we walk in, and they bring us in this room, and it's very cool because they sit you down, and then they pretty much have a stage above your head, and it's like circles you, and we'll put a little bit of pictures up, and it's like this stage that circles you, and they tell you the story of the witch trials through these different sections of the stage. So the spotlight will go on this portion here, and it's like, this is Mary Beth, and she was practicing witchcraft in the woods, and she did this and that, and they'll tell you the story, and then it goes on to the next one, to the next one, next one. So that one that's pretty cool. After that, they bring you to this other room, which is completely underwhelming. It's like a little room, and then it's this woman that kind of brings you around, and she goes, okay, this is the next exhibit, and she hits a button, and the exhibit talks for her, right? The thing that really bugged me about that museum was that when we get in there, the lady goes, absolutely no photography or video. This is copyrighted. I was like, no photography or video? What? For what? Wouldn't you want us to take pictures and, to spread the word about the museum? Absolutely no video or photo of anything. I was taking video in the room before. I was like, fuck you. I'm taking video of this. We paid to be here. I'm taking video of this. So I took some photo and video, but I was like, what? And then you walk right out. It was probably the weakest museum there. I walked out of it thinking that was not how I remember that museum at all. And that's the one that has the highest traffic pretty much. All the other museums, when we went there, it was not that crowded. It was not that packed. But the Witch Museum, there were people lined up. I was like, if I would have remembered what this was like, I don't think I would even went. The thing about this, what did you think about the first room though, where you watch the stuff from the floor? I thought that was, I probably would have went just to see that one more time.
Yeah, it was good. Each one of these museums tells the same story in a slightly different way, and it works because you're picking up more information, and the story doesn't get old.
No, it doesn't get boring.
It's when you're hearing these details about this hysteria that occurred, and the impact the major impact that it had.
Bad.
That up to and including death for 20 people.
20 people died, and
then other people that died in prison and lost property, and it's a pretty incredible story to hear about.
Right.
But the one thing that makes me laugh about all of the museums is at these displays with the dummies. I mean, these displays have got to be like 60, 70 years old, and with no update. And the magical thing about it is that they work. I mean, it works. You know, if they, like we discussed this, like if they did update it, it probably wouldn't be as eerie.
No, they're creepy. The statues are all, and they all use the same ones. Pretty much every museum, they all look the same.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't even imagine working nights at that place. Being the janitor. Oh my god! And that wasn't even the worst one. The Witch Museum. We'll get to the other one in just a second, but that one was not even the scariest one. I would say, you know, with the creepy dummies.
Right.
But you're not wrong. You hear the same story over and over again, and it never gets old because you learn. That one was the one where I would say we probably learned the most interesting facts that I remember. Like, and they told it in the best way, because we learned about Rebecca Nurse, who at that time was really old for that time period. She was 60-something years old. She died at 71. And basically, Reverend Parris's daughters, who started the whole witch craze, basically, back in 1692, Reverend Parris's daughters were the ones accusing a lot of women of being witches, including their maid Tituba. Shout out to Tituba, because you hear all about Tituba during all the museums and all the stories. She's a very prominent figure in the witch trials. But they tell you about Rebecca Nurse, who's like 60-something, 70, deaf, didn't even know what was going on. So she's being accused of being a witch. She didn't even know what's happening, okay? And they got her in court, and they end up finding out that she's not guilty in court. They tell you this in the museum. And whoever was prosecuting her said, no, she messed up on that last question. Let me ask her that question again, after they already proved that she was not guilty. So her being tired and deaf, she like misheard the question, whatever, and she answered it wrong, and they said, oh, nope, guilty. You're going right in the slammer. They threw Rebecca Nurse in the slammer at that age, and then a couple days or weeks later, one of the girls are like, her spirit is still calling out to me. You have to do something about it. You know, they're totally lying. And they went over there and chained poor Rebecca to the wall or something, because they were like, we think these iron chains, they all thought these iron chains would stop the witch's spirit from coming out of the body. This is the kind of stuff that was happening at the time. And then you also hear about, what was this dude's name? This was probably one of the wickedest stories besides Giles Corey. And this was the story of George Burroughs. That was the guy. George Burroughs, they accuse this guy of being a witch. So they go to hang this dude. And they say, if you can recite the Lord's Prayer, we'll let you go. They got this dude on Hangman's Hill, right? In front of everybody. And from what they say, this dude, George Burroughs, did the best Lord's Prayer they ever heard. It moved the people to tears. He did it perfectly. Right? So they're like, oh, this guy's not a witch. What the hell? And one of the executors, one of the guys, I think it might have been Cotton Mathers, right? He came up on his horse and he was like, nah, I'm not buying it. Murder him. And they just killed him right there.
No reversal of justice.
Nope. They said, nope, hang him. He's done.
Yeah, they could do the reversal of justice for Mrs. Nurse, but
yeah, if you were pregnant, they basically withheld your execution. That was the only way you can get out of it. And the other thing we learned is they tortured a lot of people, and if you admitted to being a witch, they didn't kill you. So all 20 people that did not admit to being a witch, you know, that held their ground and kept their innocence, they are the ones that died, which was crazy. I thought they just killed whoever they figured was a witch. They were like, no, if you admit it, you're fine, you're good. You just go sit in jail for a while. One thing I will say is all these museums are fairly priced, though. Right? There's not a lot of price gouging going on in Salem.
No.
Which was a surprise. I thought they were really going to, especially because it's growing in popularity, I thought they'd really hike up the prices for everything. Yeah. But everything was fairly reasonably priced, right? So after we go to the wonderful Witch Museum, I'm thinking to myself, I remember that museum all wrong, because I remember us walking downstairs somewhere, but I knew it wasn't the dungeon because we did it already, and I remember being immersed with the dummies. I remember the dummies being all around us, and us basically walking in the scenes. Instead of the scenes being above our head, we were like walking through the house, we were walking through the woods, and all the dummies were right next to us. I was like, I remember how cool that was. So then I'm thinking, that's got to be the Witch History Museum. And that's the one we were kind of like, like I don't know if it's gonna be good. Like it looked small, it just whatever. But we went in. That was the one I was thinking about, and that was my favorite museum. We got a pretty decent sized crowd with us. It wasn't too many people, and they brought us downstairs into this whole experience where the dummies are surrounding you, like I said. They have sound effects.
The lawmen are terribly frightened, for they are convinced that they have captured the devil himself, and he will strike them down with bolts of lightning. Shaking with fear, the lawmen deliver Burroughs to the Salem judges. He is found guilty of witchcraft and is condemned to hang at Gallows Hill.
And the tour guide couldn't have been better. She was phenomenal. She was funny. She was witty. She was knowledgeable, telling all the stories great. And it was just a creepy experience being down there. Just being with the dummies, having them like right next to you, staring at you. What'd you think of the Witch History Museum?
Oh, I thought it was really good. And when you're talking about the tour guide being funny, she had a dry sense of humor.
Right.
She wasn't over the top. I mean, she was just speaking. You could tell she had a good sense of humor, and she let the funny find her. And, just had a lot of knowledge about the story and could answer questions.
Yeah, I walked out of that museum very, very satisfied because, like, that's the one I remember. That was the best one. And spoiler alert, that was my favorite museum to be in. We'll get to yours in a little bit, but so after that, we pretty much just hung out. We didn't do too much after that, except for go to the Museum of Torture. I'll let you take that one over.
So I wanted to go to this. I wanted to go to the Museum of Torture. I was not disappointed.
Right.
By the time we were done, I was just completely creeped out. I was ready to walk out. It was excellent.
You walk in, there's torture devices everywhere. They got dummies depicting what the torture looked like. They have all these signs telling you what happened.
You know what was great about that museum, which I appreciated, was the first room started out debunking torture methods that were myth.
Yeah, the one that swings back and forth and cuts the people's stomach.
Yeah, the swinging blade.
I didn't know that was fake.
Yeah.
That was good.
But you go through it and it's just mind-boggling
stuff
that people spent time thinking this stuff up. The picture that I provided for you. This is called Ngulu execution sword from Africa in the Congo Basin. Around the 1800s, and it's used by the Bantu people as a form of execution by beheading. The victim's head would be attached to a bent sapling, and once the sword cut through the neck, the head would be flung into the sky, delivering it to heaven.
Wow. How creative. What a show, too. What a spectacle.
I mean,
most of them were spectacles because everybody got to go around. They got to see. They had that one big cross that they'd beat people with that was like had spikes all over it. And they would just beat them with this massive cross with spikes and just impale people. I like the one where they put the cage over the person's stomach and they have the person tied down to this bench or to this, this table, and they put a rat in the cage, and then they put a fire by the rat, so the rat's dying to get out, but it can't because it can't go through the sides, it can't break through the cage, so the rat starts eating through you to get out. That was wicked.
Yeah.
Very creepy stuff. They had a great atmosphere. You walk in, they have that music. It was like, very, very wicked. Yeah, very cool museum. Definitely wasn't my favorite, but it was for that town, it was like very different because every museum is pretty much every museum is a witch museum. And then let me tell you, you saw a lot of boyfriends being dragged around Salem, and I can only imagine what it would be like being there if I was one of them. Like if I didn't want to be in Salem and I had to accompany somebody, I would hate it because it's like for the day, they're like, hey, we're gonna go to the witch museum. Okay, well now we're gonna go to the Witch History Museum. And you're like, okay, that sounds good. I could deal with that. Okay, but now we're gonna go to the Witch Dungeon Museum, and then we're gonna go to the Witch House Museum. There's literally 5 witch museums there. Not to mention the other museums. But can you imagine not wanting to be there and having to suffer through this? Oh my God. There's 10,000 witch museums. And let me tell you, if you're into blonde white women, all over Salem, boy, all over. It's like a zoo for them. It's like a habitat. If you want, if you can't find them where you're at, just go to Salem, buddy. There's snow bunnies everywhere. It was great. A lot of fun stuff to look at. They had Michael Myers and Pennywise and all kind of creepy characters walking through the commons. It was a lot of fun. But one of my favorite parts was when we went to the house that the tour guide was telling us did not exist or that was miles away, and we walked right to it in about 30 seconds. We walked down there, and we smoked a cigar in front of the Joshua Ward house. I definitely wanted to do that. I thought that would be a very nice place to break out a cigar and just observe the place, because the story behind that house was great. And I didn't even remember that. The way I remembered it was that it was the sheriff's house. But when we went to the Witch History Museum and we were downstairs and they were telling us all these stories, they reminded me that the Joshua Ward house was actually Joshua Ward's house. It was this entrepreneur, this businessman in Salem, and when the witch trials happened, he got out of there. He was like, I'm gonna leave all this hysteria. I'm not trying to get blamed, because a rich guy like that, he probably would have been blamed, and they're gonna come and kill him or whatever, so people can get his stuff. At that time, that's what people were doing. Like, oh, this guy's a witch, so they can get your money, they can get your property, blah, blah, blah. So Joshua Ward leaves, right? And in moves Sheriff George Corwin, one of my favorite characters of this whole thing. I mean, and he was just an evil guy. The guy was just like, a wicked dude. And he's very famous for the Giles Corey story, where they say that Giles Corey was accused of being a witch. He didn't want to say anything. He didn't want to plead anything. He didn't plead guilty or not guilty. So what they did was, I've talked about this a few times on the show, but they put a board on his chest and they crushed him to death with a bunch of blocks and weight, whatever they had that was heavy, they crushed him with, right? And it took days. So as they're crushing this dude, Sheriff George Corwin is overseeing this, and like right before he died, they're saying they're hearing cracking noises in Giles' chest, and his tongue was hanging out of his mouth, and George Corwin walked over there and straight up put Giles Corey's tongue back in his mouth with his cane and busted the dude's teeth out while he's laying there dying with all this stuff, weighing his chest down. So this Sheriff Corwin was a wicked dude, bro. He ends up finding out that Joshua Ward moved out of the house. He moves in, and once everything starts dying down, Joshua comes back, and he's like, what the fuck is going on? But he plays it cool. He doesn't do anything crazy. Just so happens that Sheriff Corwin has a heart attack in his house, in Joshua's house. So Joshua goes and somehow finds out and holds his body for ransom. And is like, I'm not going to give up this dude's body until you give me some money. And the family had to raise all the money. They ended up giving it to him. He got the body back. But it was just a very interesting house. It was just a creepy house to be in. I remember really enjoying just like standing there when I was a kid. So we smoked a cigar in front of the house and we checked it out. And I think it's like a hotel or something now. We saw a lot of people going in and out. So I would love to stay there next time we go. And that was pretty much the last thing we did before we left. So now we're going to get into a little shopping haul. We're going to talk about what we bought, what we got. What did you buy when we were down there?
Well, I did buy this book, the Salem Witch Trials Reader. And it's got a lot of documents and things from that time. So I need to get into it. Well, I don't need to. I want to get into it and see if I can have it read by Halloween.
You got a lot of cool, like, old documents and stuff in there telling you about what was going on. That's cool. Yeah. I like that. I got a couple more things than you. I got mostly pretty much, everything was a piece of clothing. I got this sweatshirt that I'm wearing right here that says Salem on it, and it's in orange. I got this hat right here, this white hat that says Salem on it. Has a witch on the front right there. Pretty cool. And then on the screen, I'm going to put a picture of it. I got this sick shirt from this local artist, I'm assuming. He just had a table up with all of his shirts there, and I don't know what his name was. I wish he would have gave me a card or a sticker so I could shout him out. But this is a sick shirt that says Salem, Mass on it with a witch and all kind of creepy ghosts coming out. I mean, this guy did a phenomenal job, and he let me keep the hanger. And he said he gave me the hanger because I asked nicely, because I don't have that many hangers, and it was black. And he was like, yes, you can have it because you asked. So I got a hanger with it. And I also bought this beautiful Ghostface t-shirt that I had my eye on as soon as I went in the mall. I was like, that is a nice shirt. This was an awesome little t-shirt shop that's in the mall. They got all kind of Salem shirts, that all kind of horror shirts. It was sick. And that is pretty much all that I bought on the trip. Pastor, tell me, was there anything else that you wanted to do that you didn't get to do?
No, not in Salem. You said right from the beginning when we were talking about planning the trip that you didn't think that the Witch House Museum would be worth it. And then, I saw what that was, and then you just get to go in, and there's nothing in there.
Ground
really.
floor. You don't even get to go upstairs where the chick died. So
yeah, I mean,
we didn't do that.
I mean, you can see right through the window, like on both floors, like the first floor and the second floor. Like there's like fluorescent light fixtures up there.
Yeah, not very
it's
far
like
at the times.
I mean, is it even? Are you just entering an empty like shell of a house?
Pretty much.
Like why am I gonna go in there? I'm not a ghost hunter. I don't have any devices to detect anything.
And it's not they're gonna let you stay in there for hours to do a ghost hunt anyway. They're just gonna walk you around. So, okay, this is where they ate dinner. And blah blah blah. Yeah, we never went in there when I went the first 2 times. My dad was smart enough. I think he picked up on that too. He was like, that's not worth it. It's like this little house. There's no real point in going in there. I'll probably go in there maybe next time. One time I'll go in there just to see, but it didn't feel like something I wanted to do. I wish we would have went to more cafes, because that was one thing I wanted to do, was go to like the local cafes while we were there. We ended up going to the Honeydew, which is a coffee shop that's it's probably, it looks like a chain, but I don't think it is. It kind of looks like
a chain.
It is a chain?
Yes.
Okay. So that was pretty nice, but we didn't get to go to any cafes. I would have liked to do that. We didn't eat that much in there. We ate at one Italian restaurant that was pretty good, and the name of that place was Adriatic, and that was actually a good place. I would recommend that if you're down there. We ate at Adriatic, and we ate at Red's Sandwich Shop, which was a recommendation by our tour guide on the ghost tour. Oh, they make great sandwiches. Well, they burned my food, so I don't know if we'll be going back there. But they made a great pumpkin French toast. So it was, on one hand, one of the best French toasts I ever had. On the other hand, they burned my corned beef hash. So I don't know exactly where. And my soda was flat because their machine was busted.
If anyone who's listening happens to go there, and you like Eggs Benedict, I don't recommend it there.
Ooh, damn. So I guess I guess we don't recommend Red's Sandwich Shop. But let me tell you what, the Crow loved it. Crow loved Red's Sandwich Shop. He gave it like 5 Michelin stars. It was the best.
The coffee was good.
You like the coffee there?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, so that's one thing I wish we would have done, is maybe eat more in Salem. But, there's always another time. There's always other days we could go. And that was pretty much all. There was the Pirate Museum. I didn't want to go to that. There's the Monster Museum. There's probably some other little tiny things that we maybe missed and just didn't know is there that we could probably do next time. But I left very, very satisfied from that trip. But let's talk about, before we get to the rest of the stuff that we liked and whatever, the negatives of Salem. Because there's really only 2. One is that they play live music on the Commons. And the Commons is this place that you could walk, only for pedestrians, like a cobblestone walkway where all these shops are. What I think is cool about that area is that you can enter the shops from both ways. You can enter from outside or in the mall. And if you enter from in the mall, it'll take you outside when you exit, or vice versa. So I think that's very cool. But, the Commons, everybody's hanging out. Maybe you're sitting on a bench, taking a picture with Pennywise. And not only did they have live music, it was the worst live music I have ever heard in my life. It was atrocious. It was like this man wasn't even playing drums. He was beating on a bucket with drumsticks.
It was one of those white
beating
buckets.
on a big white bucket like he's playing on Times Square, like on 42nd Street in New York City. I thought I escaped that when I left the city. I thought I was done with people playing on garbage cans and buckets and paint buckets. Sadly, I was not. I did not expect that to be in Salem. And
Right.
not only he has this backing track that was like some celestial, like meditative, hippie music that was just like, what is this? And it's the same song for hours. We'd walk
on a
in a
loop.
store.
It was on a loop.
We walk in a store. We walk out of a store. Same music. And it's like, I was like, what the? It totally ruined the vibe.
And he was manic. You
Terrible.
know,
Yeah, he was
so
screaming.
He's
How's
like,
everybody
"Oh!"
doing tonight?
It's like, oh yeah.
I don't know what spell these people were under. They were circling
Right.
him. They were clapping.
I mean, it seemed so canned to me.
was
I don't
terrible.
know.
It was horrible. It was like dystopian watching them cheer him on. I was like, what drugs are they on? What the hell are they doing, dude? That was terrible because we were on the Commons for a few hours and it just constantly.
Right, yeah.
And then somebody else took his spot. They had real drums, which was a little better. And then somebody went with a guitar and he was singing. He was okay.
Yeah, he was okay.
He was tolerable the last
kind
day
of
we
folk
found.
music, which like whatever.
But that was terrible. You want to talk about the second con?
The second what?
The second con? Pros and cons, positives, negatives.
Are we talking about the restrooms?
That's right.
The
Should I say what restrooms?
what restrooms? Nobody. A sign everywhere, on almost every store, every business. No restroom. None. Nope. Never. Don't even ask.
Prominent signs.
Yep.
Maybe I'd like to take a piss before I go to your store. Maybe I'd like to take a piss before even in the cafe. There was a cafe in the mall. Big sign before you even walk in. No bathroom. So you mean I buy a coffee and a croissant? I can't take a piss in here? Really?
Right.
And the only bathroom that was indoors was in the mall, and it was atrocious. Somebody
It
took a
was
shit in the urinal.
Absolutely disgusting.
I don't know how they didn't upkeep that. The mall ain't that big. They could have cleaned it. They could have a guy walking in there every half an hour and cleaning that.
They could have hired a guy to stay in there
literally
and hand out towels.
Literally. Exactly.
I mean, with the amount of, especially like with that season, like starting,
Oh yeah, it wasn't even peak season.
you
Yikes.
can't pay a guy minimum wage and let him put out a tray for tips and
hire the
have
homeless
him
guy.
hand out towels and make sure that the bathroom stays clean.
Hire the homeless guy that was hanging outside. Instead of having him outside begging for change, you give him a job, put him in the bathroom, clean him up, put him
Right.
in there. It was ridiculous. I mean, I had to pee the whole time, the whole trip. I had to think about what are we gonna do? Let me go pee before that. I mean, even if
So we finally discovered there was like seven
seven
porta
porta potties.
potties.
Yep,
Yeah.
they had this one designated area for porta potties because they must know that there's no bathrooms there, and that probably only makes the people that run these places even more bold. They probably think, oh, the porta potties are down there. You can go down there. Don't worry about it. You just go right there. It was terrible. I couldn't believe it. You could not take a piss. The only place you can take a piss if you go into a restaurant. If you sit down at a restaurant and order, you can use their bathroom.
Yeah.
Anywhere else, you go get a coffee, you go buy a book, you go to one of the gift shops, you go to a museum. Now, the Witchboard Museum, I'm not sure if they had a bathroom or not. I didn't check. I wanted to go in there, but that's the only place I'm not sure about. Every other museum, strict no bathroom policy. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you can't clean the bathroom every half an hour? Seriously? Especially the ones where you sit down, like the witch history, the witch dungeon, and then the witch museum where you
Right.
sit down for a show. You don't want to let people use the bathroom. Seriously? And the witch dungeon museum was in the corner, way away from those porta potties. So if you had to go, I remember walking out of there like ready to die. I was like, oh my God, like I forgot even where I think we went to the porta potties after that. But I was like, this is ridiculous. But those were the only negatives.
and I think somebody just didn't. Somebody was probably tired of trying to find a place to take a piss, and so they, that one night that we were walking up in the parking garage, it smelled like piss, and usually you would assume it might be a homeless person, but after seeing no bathroom, I mean, it might have been a woman squatting. Who knows?
Yeah. They were tired of it. They're like, I gotta go. I gotta go. I'll take a piss right in the staircase. Wow. So your favorite museum was the Torture Museum, right?
Yeah, and then as far as witch museums, it was the witch history.
Witch history, where we're downstairs immersed in the dummies. Do you have a favorite story that we heard, like from the Salem witch trials?
Yeah, I liked Giles Corey's story is great.
Right.
You know,
Can't beat that.
Every time they put weight on, you know, they would ask him, "Do you confess to be a witch?" He would say, "More weight."
More weight.
But
They could have just,
I want to make sure I got her name
left me
right.
there without sugar, and I would have gave it up. Like, I'm a witch. I'm a witch. I need a Coke right now. Let alone having boards on my freaking chest.
I really like Bridget Bishop's story.
She was a rebel.
She was, yeah. I mean, you know, probably without a doubt, feminist of the time.
She had her own bar.
Yep, nobody could tell her what to do. She kept the bar open later than they wanted her to. She produced or sold more beer than they wanted her to.
She made her own beer. Yep, in 1692 that she's doing all this. Bridget Bishop was a badass. And they eventually killed her. Yep. They had arrested her for disorderly conduct for arguing in public. That was great. That they
being an argumentative woman. That's
right. Well, no. That's not what it was. They arrested her and her husband, but the husband's family posted bail and he left her there.
Oh, okay.
That's what that was, which was even crazier. Her and her man were arguing in public. They arrest them both. His family bails him out, and he goes, "See you later. You're done." And he leaves her there. That was the first time she got arrested. And then she got arrested for the witch trial, and then boom, I think they hung her.
Yeah. She was the first to be hung.
That's right. Yeah, Bridget Bishop was an icon. An icon. And so
she was
Tituba.
Hung on June 10th, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were hung on July 19th.
You know, it's a toss-up to me between Tituba and Giles Corey. Because Tituba, you know, she was the maid. She gets blamed for being a witch, and she's smart enough eventually to realize that all she has to do is just say she's a witch, and she gets out of it. But, I mean, you know, she couldn't have been in a worse position. She's a slave. You know, the Reverend Paris was a big piece of shit, and so was Cotton. You know what I mean? And she has to sit in jail. She has no money already, so she's probably in one of these, you know, horrible cells. And when she was the first to go into jail and the last to get out. And then she was sold. And then with the money that Reverend Paris sold her for, he used to pay for her jail fees. I mean, Tituba's an icon. And I'm surprised that they don't have any Tituba merchandise, a Tituba shirt, Tituba like card. I mean, she was an icon of the Salem witch trials. She was great, man. Like, her story is very interesting that these girls just threw her under the bus like that. And one of the stories doesn't say that they threw her under the bus. They were saying that the little girls were calling out to her when they were going through these spells, when they were like freaking out and they were going through that, you know, the little like fits of rage and stuff. So one story when we were in the witch museum was basically kind of implying that they didn't mean to do it, that they were calling out to her for help or something like that. And Reverend Paris was like, "Oh, she's a witch. Okay, so we're gonna, because she was already like showing them little things. Remember, she was doing the game with them with like the egg yolk. They could see their husband or something like that.
Yeah.
Tituba's an icon. She ended up surviving. God bless Tituba, and they don't give her enough respect. They need to have like Tituba Drive. You know, like they need to make her more prominent in Salem. They need to give her some more respect. Right. But at the end of the day, you can't beat Giles Corey. That story is the best. That's the one I never forgot ever since I went. And that's the one me and my dad still bond over. My dad will still walk in the room and go, more weight, randomly. Loves Giles Corey. So that's a great one. Did you have a favorite ghost that we heard about on the ghost tour? Or, you know, because you hear about the ghost of Giles Corey, and that's an even interesting one because they say that he cursed the town. He cursed every sheriff, and every sheriff apparently died of some kind of heart disease or some kind of heart issue. And they say that they see Giles Corey when like big catastrophes are going to happen in Salem. So that's one of the ghosts. You got the woman in blue at the Rockefeller restaurant. Do you have any favorites?
I mean, the first story we heard was about the indentured servant that was left up in the attic.
Yeah.
I mean, that story is very creepy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that story. Some of the other stories were okay, but I really liked hearing about Bridget Bishop.
Yeah. Well, they say she haunts the seafood place. It's like alleged. She's the woman in white in the seafood place, that she steals silverware and stuff like that. I like that one too. That was a good one. We ended up staying. I forgot exactly what that restaurant's called, but it's like Johnny's Seafood or something like that, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's easy to find if you look it up. That one's good. For some reason, I really like the woman in blue, where they were talking about how she still terrorizes the restaurant. Nobody wants, they have to draw straws to go down to the basement. And like somebody was painting down there one time, and they were like, they had to paint a woman in red, but then like they said that he ended up painting the woman in blue. Like she kind of possessed his mind to paint her. You know what I mean? She just hangs around and just makes trouble in the restaurant, and everybody hates her because she's always messing stuff up. I really like the woman in blue. That was a lot of fun. Did you say your favorite part of the trip yet? What was your overall favorite aspect of Salem?
No, I didn't. I just like the whole package, and just the excitement that it produced in me to really enjoy all of October, not just Halloween.
Right.
Just enjoy the creepiness of the month. I can't wait until it rains and some of the leaves fall off the tree, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to all that.
Wow. It kicked off a little spirit in you, a little Halloween
Yeah.
spirit. Yeah, it was great. I would say my favorite were probably the museums. You just can't beat that. They were really good. You get all the stories. That was probably my favorite, but it was a great time. It was the best trip I ever took, and I was so sad leaving. I was like, oh my God, I would stay another day. It wasn't even that much to do. I was like, I'll stay another day. We could have ate more. We could have went to like maybe one more museum. I definitely would love to go back. And I'll go to pretty much all those museums again. Definitely not the Witch Museum, but I go to the dungeon again and go to the history again. And try more food. And it was a great time. It was a very great time, and definitely the best trip I've taken in a long time. Definitely my favorite that we've taken. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So then
Yeah, mine too.
after that, we go to Portsmouth, and we're gonna breeze by this. This is pretty much the end of the show. But I was very surprised because we go to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Pastor's like, we're gonna go on a walking ghost tour that's self-guided. So I'm thinking it's gonna be like this thing that you do where you go and they show you little articles, or they show you like these little documents where you read the address, you walk over there, and then you read the story. You walk over to the next address, you read it, and you walk over. That was not it. They have this app called Walk-in Tours, and it's this whole experience where this narrator reads it to you, and it works through GPS. So it'll tell you, walk down the street and turn down Port Street, and then turn right and look at the big black house. And then you go there, and then they go, now I'm going to tell you about this woman who suffocated her man, and then you could see him in the window at 12 o'clock at night. And it's just these great stories with this great narrator. I was shocked at how good it was. And I'm going to say that was my favorite. That beat the ghost tour in Salem for me. That was great. It beat it so much that I downloaded, because you ended up downloading the app and buying it on your phone. When I got home, I bought it on my phone so I could listen to it again. Because you can do like this version of it where it shows you the location, and then it just does it for you. You don't have to like use the GPS. But my favorite part of that was that they had these ghosts apparently in Portsmouth where even you're not even safe on the street. Because they'd be like, okay, now take a walk left and walk up Smith Street. But watch out, because there's a ghost that goes up and down the street, and she looks in people's windows. I was like, oh, shit. Wow. And then there was
she goes up and down looking in the windows for her husband.
Yeah. And then they would talk about the hunter, whatever his name was. He's like, okay, walk down the alley and walk down Jones Street, but be careful, because the hunter's coming on the horse and he's going to chop your fucking head off. I was like, wow. I mean, they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
I was shocked. They had all these sound effects. It was one of my favorite parts of the trip.
It was really good.
And I was like, self-ghost tour. Like, how good could this be? I'm like, I think
And
we're just
actually,
gonna
the ghosts in
redocument.
Portsmouth were a lot more interesting than anywhere else.
Way better.
I mean, there was a ghost in a bank, a ghost in a brothel.
Yeah.
She's still trying to drum up business.
Still trying to court men. And if you smell sea air, that means it's her. If you smell salt water, that is the prostitute coming to court you. It was a lot of fun. There was the lady that got mangled. She got like murdered by the statues. And then now her ghost kind of haunts wherever those statues go. They ended up moving the statues. They scalped her. They cut like her fucking hands, all kind of crazy stuff. And now her soul haunts wherever they move those statues because
they moved them into John Paul Jones's house.
Yeah, that was great. So then we went to Boston and we ended up going on a nice ghost tour there, like a ghost / true crime tour. Do you remember the company that did that?
Old Town Trolley Tours.
Okay. And I don't want to say too much because you definitely got to go experience that. They take you on a bus. The company has keys to both of the graveyards in Boston, the oldest graveyards like around. And I mean, there's tons of bodies in these places. Like there's 8,000 bodies in one, but they only have 3,000 tombstones, which means they were just doubling, tripling, quadrupling up bodies in there. So they bring us into the cemetery. They tell us all these
times
stories.
12.
Times 12?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then they would crunch them down and put more on.
That's insane. Yeah, they would just throw bodies out after a while, but they couldn't fit them.
Yeah.
They would just throw them away. That was a great tour. Great tour guide. They took us to the cemeteries. It was a mixture. It was more true crime than ghost, though. They really didn't do a lot of ghost stuff, which was interesting, I thought. Because it looked like they leaned on more of the ghost stuff for the advertisement.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, check that place out. That was great. We went to a great Italian restaurant that was like a sleeper. We didn't know it was going to be that good. We kind of just stumbled upon it, and it was really good. What was that place? That was La Famiglia Giorgio. If you're ever in Boston, check that place out.
Yeah.
What'd you think of Boston?
Oh, I loved it. My trips to Boston have always been go in, go out. Like when I was in high school, we spent like an afternoon there. I brought people to the airport. I've been to the Science Museum and left. And went to a funeral, left. And even though we went in and went out, I got to see more of Boston driving in myself, walking to the restaurant, and then walking to the tour. And I mean, I'm glad I got a flavor of that section of the city, because the streets were almost like alleys, brick streets, and I'd never experienced that. I've experienced highway to the place I was going and then leaving. And so I would really like to spend more time learning about Boston, because that definitely really piqued my interest.
Right. I would definitely want to go back to Boston. I don't care about the history of Boston. You know what I mean? I don't want to know, this is where the ships rolled in and they brought grain in. I don't care about that.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about like the layout and
okay. I thought you meant the history.
What there is an opportunity to do.
Yeah. I would definitely go back to Boston. Definitely. So there you go. There was our spooky tour of Salem and our spooky tour of Portsmouth. I had a great time. Do you have anything you want to end this off with? Anything you want to say?
I want to give some advice to the listening audience.
Okay. Love it.
In my process with the church and becoming ordained, that I spent many years cloistered within that community, and I didn't do anything. I didn't go anywhere. And I just really appreciate Mo and Jasmine and Gritty's company that I've been able to go on these trips. And this trip in particular, like seeing something that's really not that far from where I live and seeing what it looked like, seeing what New Hampshire will look like, a little bit of Maine. We drove up into a little bit of Maine. and really enjoying myself. I'm just glad that I've broken out of this. And when people told me in the past, I'm passing it on to you. There is more to life than your job, and go out and see something, because I mean, I just had a fantastic time and I had great company.
Go see some ghosts. Get out there and see some ghosts and hear about people getting slaughtered and crushed to death and hung and all kind of great stuff.
Some people I was telling at work, they're like, "You're a pastor," and I'm like, "So I like to be creeped out."
We need to pass it around in case things get hairy, in case somebody,
Yeah.
especially at the Witchboard Museum, something might have followed us back, something might have attached itself, blah, blah, blah. So we need to pass it around. Well, thanks for bringing us. It was a great time.
Yes.
Had a spectacular time, and I would love to go back to Salem anytime. Fantastic. If you have any experiences in Salem and you're watching this on YouTube, hit the comment section. Let us know what you thought about it, what your favorite parts are, blah, 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 all the kind of stuff you want to tell us. And there you go. Happy Halloween season, baby. We're knee deep. Peace and love. See you next time.